Is the crunchy life a better life? In this 2-part series, we're looking at our personal struggle to live a healthy, holistic lifestyle within the constraints of our fast-paced modern world.
Today is going to be a fun discussion about how crunchy are we? And next week, we're going to dive deep into what we call the dark side of crunchy
Dun,
life.
dun, dun.
This is the Balanced Family Podcast with Ben.
And Jessica, there's a lot to balance when you have a family. Marriage, kids, health, career, while you're trying to balance all the opinions out there on how to do things right.
Today, we'll cut through the noise, tackle hard questions, and share stories as we try to get to the heart of the things that really matter.
These are my crunchy props, and one of them has been making noise this entire time.
Yeah, I was like,
Ben
what
was
is that
wondering-
sizzling noise?
So this is water kefir granules. It is a fermented drink that smells like it needs to be fed, but that was what was making all the noise.
Slightly disturbing to say it needs to be fed like it's a creature.
It is. It's a pet. Sourdough starter.
Yummy.
Canning.
Yeah.
Very crunchy of me. I grew these tomatoes myself, then made the salsa myself, and then canned about, how many jars do we have?
There's probably like 20 jars of that
it's more than
salsa.
20 for sure.
Yeah, it's probably like 30 jars of salsa in our laundry room because there's nowhere
We
else
really
to
like
store it.
salsa. Okay.
Yeah.
2 more things. I've got homemade elderberry syrup. For this time of year, you got to have elderberry. And then I thought I would bring my gardening binder, because you're only a real gardener if you organize your entire garden in a binder system and plan out literally every single week what you're supposed to do in your garden to maximize your harvest and be able to grow your own food.
And you got that from an online course, right?
I did. I took an online course on how to garden better.
Hey, online courses work. And the farmer was from Arkansas, right?
Yeah, she lives in Russellville.
Yeah. Sweet. Russellville or Conway?
It was Russellville.
Okay, yeah. All right, so, man, there's honestly a lot more crunchy stuff about us.
That's true.
First, I got to say what crunchy is, because I know there are some people in our audience that are above the age of 50 that have asked me, like, hey, what does crunchy actually mean? And so I would say, how would we define crunchy? It would be like, older people would call it hippie.
Yeah.
Like more natural minded.
Very natural minded, like back to the earth. There was that whole back to the earth movement, I think like in the 70s. And so this is kind of similar, but I would say there's a big spectrum. There's the more homesteady people who I would say probably maybe I'm a little bit more like that, who are very practical. They like doing natural things. They like, living off the land. But then you have kind of what I would call the bougie crunchies, which are the ones that are more into low tox. They're more anti-vax, which homesteaders are too. They buy all their groceries at Whole Foods, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, and there's a huge market for organic stuff. And we'll
100%.
talk about that. And I can't remember this episode or next, but kind of like hippie without the LSD.
Yeah.
And stuff, more natural minded. And we're going to break a lot more of what crunchy means more in this series. But this is inspired by this book and this creator that we follow, really very crunchy. She is so funny.
Very funny. I remember when she first came out, she just started posting videos and they were going viral on TikTok. And everyone was like, is she making fun of crunchy people or is she crunchy?
Yeah.
And like, I remember there was so much drama. There was literally entire accounts created to try to figure out if she was actually crunchy or not. There was all these like conspiracy theories that she was like employed by Pfizer. I don't even know. It was nuts. This was back I think in 2020.
I love comedy. Like it's sketch comedy. I love when comedy is so smart that like people can't figure it out, or to me, that was the genius of it.
I felt very exposed.
Yeah. And then when she brought in her husband too, so her husband in this sketch comedy too, Jason, her name's Emily and his name is Jason. And it's like highly produced, like highly polished, like good. I mean, it is like professional grade
Ben
comedy.
appreciates
Comedy
the
skits. Oh, I
videography.
recognize the work that they put in, whoever edits. I think Jason at least used to do a lot of it. I mean, I appreciate a lot of the work that goes into it. I'm sure it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of scripting, a lot of producing. It's so funny though. And basically it's like satire that makes fun of crunchy life and just how overly ridiculous some people and obsessive people can get about being crunchy, but she actually is really crunchy.
Right.
So that's the genius of it, is that
she knows the depths Like I remember when she first started posting, I was like, yo, she has got to be crunchy because only crunchy people, like she had one about essential oils and how like, you're really very crunchy or you're really crunchy if you don't use essential oils. So a lot of people think that crunchy people use essential oils.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're really crunchy, you don't even use essential oils because they've been found to have VOCs and it's like a whole thing. Okay?
Yeah.
And so when she posted that, I was like, you are definitely crunchy.
Dude, she's
you are not making fun of crunchy people. Like if you know that, you have to be crunchy.
That's the thing, is like crunchy has become very mainstream in the world today, and for good reasons, and we'll talk about that. But she's like deep crunchy. But that's what I love about her comedy, is that she makes fun of herself.
Right.
And as you read her book, the book is really good. The book, it's called Really Very Crunchy, and the subtitle is A Beginner's Guide to Removing Toxins from Your Life Without Adding Them to Your Personality. So she talks a lot about what we call the dark side of crunchy life, and that's what part 2 of this series is going to be on. But she's like so aware of, again, the toxins of crunchy life on your mind, on your emotions, on your heart, and
judgments of others.
Your judgments of others. She talks a lot about just how it's impacted her, like friendships and learning, compromises she's had to make, like stuff she's had to lighten up about, because like if you're just always putting your preferences on crunchiness and you're ruled by that anxiety, then you like literally can't have friends, basically, unless you walk around and find people that are exactly like you, which is just really not a good way to live. Like that's not true community, is just to find people that always agree with every little thing that you believe in. It's a great book. On top of all of her talking about just like her process of becoming crunchy and wrestling with a lot of anxiety and stuff, it actually has a lot of practical stuff of like, if you were to become crunchy, what would you look at as far as like water, food, air quality, etc. So it is like, there's a lot of practical stuff in it. It is kind of a lot, I would say. Like if you're already crunchy and you read the book, you're like, preach, on all that kind of practical stuff.
I was laughing when we were reading before bed and you're reading and you're like, this is so overwhelming. I was like, welcome to my world.
Right,
it's like he got basically what I have experienced over the last probably 10 years of just learning more about living more holistically, etc. He got that, I think, all of it in probably about a 2-hour period.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it I knew, but I was trying to read it from like an objective perspective. Like if you just pick up this book and you're silky, as we'll describe what that means, like you would read that and be like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. And
I have to change everything.
But you got to know her heart, because she sets the stage in the book in the beginning, like really sharing her heart, which is that I'm about to dump a lot of information on you, but like the way you carry it is what really matters. And we'll talk a lot more about that in part 2, but it's a good book if you are wanting to know more about crunchy life. One thing that's helpful is that she has what she calls the crunchy spectrum. Mm-hmm. And I liked that because that really captured what we have reflected on. Is like there is a spectrum. Like there's a difference between saying like I want to have a garden in my backyard and grow my own vegetables, to anti-vax conspiracy theory to the max and like the government's trying to control our minds. Like there is like a spectrum, and she kind of captures that well. In the beginning, she has like a survey to like see how crunchy you are. So I was going to ask you these questions,
okay,
Jessica.
I'm nervous. Actually, I have not read this book yet. Ben was the one that, you guys might be surprised about this, but Ben was the one that picked this up. So I'm excited.
All right. So when it comes to food, do I prefer to A, cook whatever is in season and grow close to my home? B, cook at home mostly, but Chick-fil-A is good too. C, whatever sounds good, easy is king.
I would say B, but I would say we're definitely closer to A. We're like between B and A. Like we don't eat out, but maybe like twice a month.
Yeah. Well, maybe a couple other quick
cook
meals, but
yeah. I guess we do some quick meals at home, but generally speaking, I home cook, and I do cook seasonally.
Yeah, we sit around the table and eat as a family, home cooked meals.
90% of the time. Yeah.
All right. Number 2, what is your attitude toward DIY projects? A, I enjoy DIY projects and find them fulfilling. B, I appreciate them, but don't actively participate. C, I prefer to buy ready-made products.
I'm definitely A. I'm laughing.
Really? Would you say that?
I'm a very DIY person. I'm not crafty, but I'm going to do it myself. For example, the other day when you were roasting me about the Trader Joe's drink that I was wanting to DIY, do you remember that?
Yeah.
And so I bought this Trader Joe's apple cider vinegar drink, and they're like $2 a pop. I was like, I could make this myself. So I went to Walmart and I bought some organic juice, and I have apple cider vinegar, and I have sparkling water, and I'm going to put it, I haven't done it yet. I should have done it for this show. Dang it. I want to sip on it because I don't want to have to buy it. So that's what I mean is I think DIY, I'm not like crafty, but I thrift all the time and I refurbish things that I find at thrift stores. I don't know. Maybe that's not what she's referring to.
Well, no, I think you mean in general DIY projects. I would say food wise, you are pretty heavy DIY. And I thought that was funny. I was just like, why would you waste your time doing that if somebody's already produced it?
But for me, it's about the money. It's like, I don't want to spend my grocery budget on apple cider vinegar drinks when I could make the same thing for like a fraction of the cost.
But
maybe this is me being thrifty.
The supplies and the time you put into it, it's the same. It's like those memes.
It's worth it to me. It's fun. It's about the chase.
True. I get that. I get that. Well, and we'll talk about meat processing here in a minute, because that relates to a whole side of us. Some of the things you do, like, and the time you spend on it and the supplies you buy, it reminds me of the memes that make fun of, like, I spent $3,000 on a garden for like 50 cents worth of tomatoes.
3 vegetables. Yeah.
It's true. All right. Number 3, how do you feel about recycling or composting? A, I'm passionate about it and do it regularly. B, I do it occasionally. C, it's not a priority.
Or definitely B.
Yeah, definitely. Number 4, which type of travel most appeals to you? A, camping in the wilderness. B, visiting a local farm or eco resort. C, exploring bustling cities.
Definitely A.
Definitely A. 5, which words best describe your fashion choices? Natural and earthy, comfortable and relaxed, trendy and sporty.
Oh gosh. All the above?
Yeah.
I'm eclectic.
Number 6, how do you feel about supporting local businesses and artisans? I'm going to try to abbreviate, but A, you like prioritize supporting local. B, when convenient, but not always. C, doesn't really factor in purchasing decisions.
Definitely B. Maybe even closer to C.
Yeah, closer to C.
Here's the thing. I buy a lot of things secondhand, though.
Yeah.
This is like a whole other category.
Yeah. Sorry, local businesses out there. When it comes to personal care products, I prefer A, organic and homemade.
A.
Let me finish the choices.
Okay.
Don't interrupt the teacher. All right. When it comes to personal care products, I prefer A, organic and homemade. B, all natural or plant-based products. C, popular and branded products.
Maybe I am a little bit between A and B.
Yeah, I was going to say more B. 8, which activity would you choose for relaxing at night? A, baking a loaf of sourdough. B, working on a favorite craft. C, watching a movie or TV series.
I feel so exposed.
Yeah.
I'm A, definitely
yes.
A.
I will say, like, Jessica is like sourdoughing it like all the time, yo. I just got to brag on her. She is like a sourdough authority. Would you say that?
Definitely. I've been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's enough to where me, who doesn't make sourdough, like, I will go see other people's sourdough and I'll be like, well,
it's hard. It's hard when you're good at baking.
Yeah.
You're like, well,
like my wife really knows how to sourdough. How often do you connect with nature? Daily, a few times a week, or rarely?
I would try to do daily. That's my intent. I wouldn't say that like I can literally connect with nature on a daily basis all the time.
Yeah.
But definitely more than just a few times a week.
Yeah. So it's a little survey sample of like the spectrum, and there's silky. So if you don't know that word, silky would be like
Diet Coke, McDonald's,
like just like mainstream,
Amazon.
like basically how we grew up in the 90s. Like it's just like convenience was king. And it's actually funny in her sketch, like the silky character wears a Coca-Cola shirt, which is really funny. Anyway, so that's silky. And then there's really very crunchy on the other extreme. And then in the middle, she calls it scrunchy. Yeah. And I think scrunchy really describes us.
Probably true. I would say scrunchy more toward crunchy.
Yeah. Well, and it depends.
Because I have friends who I would say are actually legitimately scrunchy.
Yeah.
But we definitely do things that are pretty crunchy.
Yeah. And I would say we're like super deliberately scrunchy. Like what I mean by that is like we are super informed of the crunchy perspective, and some of the things we like deliberately choose not to do because of convenience. Like for instance, like I know we probably should and could have a more water filtered situation in our home, but like we just don't. And it's not like we don't believe in a lot of what the research is saying.
Little do you know that I've been researching water filters and I'm about to propose to you.
Well, you know, and this is the point of this podcast about things becoming mainstream. You step into more homes nowadays and more people are filtering their water more deliberately. I just laugh because starting this company, Balanced Families, the Balance podcast, our Balanced Birth, like it literally is everything about us is like just pretty balanced.
Pretty in the middle.
And that's just the way we like things.
I'll give an example of things. I still burn Bath and Body Works candles. Don't come at me, okay? I know they're terrible. I know I should DIY my own beeswax candles.
Yeah.
But I don't. Okay. Yeah. I buy Sweater Weather candles from, if you know what that is referring to, you're my friend. I burned one last night.
You know what? Here's another great example.
Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah,
phthalates all up in our house.
I know. Well, I was
sorry.
yeah, and she talks a lot about fragrances in the book, and I was just like, dang. But at the same time, again, we're very deliberate of like, there's just there's just battles you got to choose for yourself and your time, especially when you're like have kids and have jobs. Like it just makes it even harder to like have the time even and the luxury to like really change some of those different lifestyle choices. And again, we're going to talk a lot more about that in part 2, but I was going to read that. I thought this was really funny. At the end of each chapter, it's cool. She always has like a 1-question survey about the whole spectrum, silky, scrunchy, and really very crunchy. On this page, she said, if you could have any kind of vacation, what would you choose? For silky, it was an all-inclusive cruise. Scrunchy is a beach on Florida's 30A, and really very crunchy is a hike on the Appalachian Trail. And I laughed because like we literally did all 3 of those.
We did.
And like in 18 months.
We did.
We didn't hike the Appalachian Trail, but we hike a lot here. We live in the Ozarks of Northwest Arkansas, so we hike a lot. But I was like, that is like the perfect capture of just how scrunchy we are. Is like we literally went on a cruise, literally went to 30A and literally hike like all the time.
No, we didn't go on a cruise. We went to an all-inclusive resort. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
But we went on a cruise the year before.
2 years ago, yeah.
Was that 2 years? Regardless, but yeah, all those things capture.
No, but 2024 we went to an all-inclusive resort, which was amazing.
Yeah, true. And
definitely preferred over
and like
cruise.
this year we camped like totally off grid, like super remote 2 times. I mean, absolutely.
I prefer off grid camping.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, we're eclectic. And that's something that I've noticed about us. Like we are very eclectic people, and this is kind of the way I like things. But anyway, let's talk more about just like, I want us to capture our crunchiness. All right. So let's talk about more of this whole idea of like what we would aspire to be, but we know we conveniently can't do that. Jessica, would you ever want to completely move off grid and live off the land?
Absolutely.
Really?
100%. I dream about it. I follow people who do it. I live vicariously through their lives. I'm for real. I would love to live off grid. I about 5 times a day think about completely getting rid of my iPhone. I was a very late adopter of an iPhone. Remember, I was very against getting an iPhone. I was like, I don't want all that stuff because I know myself and I have a hard time managing myself with my phone. And so because it's such a difficult thing and because we are on social media and we literally, this is our company is all virtual, I struggle. And so sometimes I just want to throw it all away. Just go live off grid. And I actually could totally see you and I someday, not literally living completely off grid, but living like on land and living, I guess, still kind of connected to the grid. I don't know if I really want to do solar and all that. Yeah. That seems stressful. Okay. But what about you?
Before I answer that, I do want to laugh about the whole iPhone thing because I remember how resistant you were to smartphones.
So resistant.
So a lot of our audience, they're like young. They don't even understand the world before smartphones. But I remember vividly when the iPhone came out, and like my only close friend that had an iPhone was Jonathan.
Oh yeah.
And he was just like, dude, this phone is like amazing. I'm like, it has no buttons. Like what kind of ridiculous phone does not have buttons?
Yeah.
And so I was like trying to be like productive. I had a BlackBerry, a full-blown BlackBerry.
Yeah, he did.
But I was such a cheapskate. I was such a cheapskate that I didn't have a data plan to even like have the email feature.
I forgot about that.
I just bought it. I bought the BlackBerry because I liked the organization. I liked having a good calendar. I like being able to type notes and stuff like that.
Gen Z will never be able to appreciate
They won't understand.
No.
Anyway, Jonathan, I remember just like looking at his iPhone.
It was so small, by the way.
It was like super small. But in my mind, it was like actually big. Huge, it was just like, what the heck is this? Like there's no buttons. This is ridiculous. I remember Jonathan just being like, dude, I don't know. It's just so great. It was like, and that just speaks to like how intuitive, and that was the first of like gesture-based technologies where it was just like, it's so natural. And then when I remember, I think my first iPhone was the iPhone 3GS. So it was like, that was like the 2nd or 3rd generation or whatever. And I was just like, dude, this is amazing.
I was
it was a lot of work to get you to get a BlackBerry. I remember.
Yeah, I did get a BlackBerry for a little while and I really hated it. I still hate my iPhone. I really do. I would totally go to a flip phone in a second. I actually have thought about, these are inner workings that I haven't shared with you, which is surprising because we work together. I have thought about making this my work phone and actually getting a flip phone.
That's not a bad idea. A lot of people are doing that these days.
Because I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate the iPhone. I hate it. I love the apps. I love the convenience. I don't want convenience. I actually don't. This is me being crunchy coming out.
Yeah.
I don't want convenience.
Yeah.
I want to disconnect.
Yeah.
And I want things to be hard and for there to be more separation, because listen, I'm gonna go on a rant, because I feel as though there's an expectation then of, with this iPhone, I'm gonna respond to every text within which text messaging I guess I would still get on a flip phone, but emails,
right,
social media, all of that. Like I would love to be able to just go to my iPhone, check my email, do my social media, and then turn it off and still have my flip phone. I should do it.
Yeah, maybe so. You know, and a lot of people are doing that.
My heart is leaping to this idea.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time of like social media. There's all these negatives around it, but there's actually a lot of positives. And so being able to compartmentalize, I could see that being attractive to people. Because I'm like totally opposite. Like I actually love my iPhone. I don't have shame in saying that, but I don't have an issue. I like can't even remember to check social media sometimes, but I love being able to like, boom, read the news, boom, find a DIY video of how to fix my dishwasher, the dishwasher drama that we've been dealing with for like weeks. I'm just like,
talk about it.
I love being able to take notes. I love being able to.
This is why I couldn't be off grid. We have to have a dishwasher, hun.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to why we're not off grid. I think everybody's is different because, I don't really struggle with that, like being addicted to technology and stuff like that. But I love the convenience and the power that you can just like, boom, pull up stuff. And we've seen the benefits of social media even in our lives, not just for the business, right, but like, connecting with other people with regarding our daughter's health, which is like this big thing we've not talked about on this podcast. It will come up someday, but like we like connecting with other parents.
It was life-changing.
It was life-changing. We learned more from other parents than even our doctors.
And we wouldn't have had that opportunity without social media. So I'm not dogging it completely, right, but I am saying I want more separation.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you live off grid?
Would I live off grid? I've actually, if you had asked me that like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have said yes. I actually really now, I would say no. I would absolutely
never?
Nope.
Oh no. What are we going to do?
We both know the reason we will never do that is because of like the relationships that we have and the community we're connected to inside of our church and just friends. Like we're never going to do that.
We're not going to live like,
but I remember,
30 miles. Are you saying like actually like literally
truly
in
off
the
grid?
middle?
No, I wouldn't mind living out of town a little bit more. No,
that's what I thought you were saying. And
as long as I'm in a like semi-convenient radius of convenience.
And when we don't have kids who were shuttling around every day.
Right. Yeah. But like, no, the question is like, would you ever want to live completely off grid? And I would just say no. Like I enjoy spending time on the things that I want to spend time on. And it's like, I know what it takes to live off.
Right. It's a lifestyle change.
Like, even like growing up. So I grew up on 22 acres.
We're laughing because y'all, ever since we've been married, Ben will be like, yeah, I can't even say it, it's so stupid. He would be just like every time he would talk about his childhood home, he'd be like, I lived on 22 acres. I've been married to you for almost 14 years, yo. I know you lived on 22 acres.
This is how I set myself apart from the mainstream. I did not grow up in a neighborhood. I grew up in 22 acres.
Let everyone mark it down, write it in your journals. Like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I know how to work hard. I know how to kill.
Every weekend, I would be out. Y'all, this is all he ever talks about.
Listen, I can kill snakes. I can build paintball courses. I can fish.
They did take the land. They literally completely cleared it out. Like it was basically like a meth haven. I don't know.
Whoa. Well, I'd say whoa. Actually, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah. No, hey, like my parents,
they cleared
my parents
it out,
were visionaries,
and it was amazing.
Yes,
and,
I remember driving to this land for the first time, and it was thick as Hades. It was thick as Hades. That's not an idiom.
Hot as Hades.
I hope it's not thick. Anyway, it was hot as Hades. Well, it was summer too. But anyway, I remember driving out to this property and being like, "What are we doing?" And there was just like junk and trash everywhere and just really thick. And they had this pond you literally couldn't even see because it was so thick. And we were just like, y'all, this is crazy. But my parents had a vision, and it took us probably like 7 years, but we really beautified the place. We built a house. It was actually crazy. They like buried the house that was there. They dug a hole and like pushed it into this hole and like buried it. Because I don't really know why that. I think it's probably
cheaper to do
cheaper,
that. Yeah.
And that's just what people do as opposed to just like shipping it all off. But we did have lots of dumpsters, and we got rid of obviously a lot of the trash. And then built this house, cleared out the land where you could see the pond. It was really beautiful. But I do laugh because like I had to weed eat that pond because it was so thick to be able to see it, walk and enjoy it. So it was probably like 4 to 6 hours of weed eating.
Just weed eating.
Just weed eating. Every Saturday it was just like hard work. And I'm like so thankful for that. Like it built stuff inside of me. Like I know how to work hard, and I've worked on, you know, farms. I've worked in other settings. Like people,
sure, he worked on a chicken farm once.
like anybody that's worked with me, like no, I'm pretty scrappy. Like even I'm really small. They're like, dude, Ben can lift a lot more than you would think. And I think because
that's why I married you.
I think because I grew up like that, living in a suburb to me is so awesome. I'm just like, dude, I can mow in like 30 minutes. Like mowing was like this all day affair and multi-vehicle. I mean, you're on the bush hog and then you're on the push mower and then you're on the weed eater. I mean, it was like it was a lot of work. And so
that's why you don't want to live off grid.
I know what it takes. Well, I wouldn't say I'm traumatized. It's kind of like, I checked that box. Mm-hmm. Even though, again, we weren't living off grid. It was a similar vibe where it's like your free time is spent working hard and you're constantly bugged with like projects you want to do, especially if you're a person that really wants to do things like excellent. Like we were always thinking of the next thing and wanting to improve. And it's just, it wears on you over time. And so whenever I drive out in rural Arkansas and I see people off grid and like their land is like kind of a dump.
Where we stayed at our Airbnb, that other.
Well, no, that was really nice. That was an Airbnb off grid.
But I'm saying, it was.
Well, what I'm trying to say is when I see people that like their land's kind of a dump, I honestly don't have as much judgment because I'm like, dude, I get it. Like there's only one thing you can do per Saturday. Usually it's like, I kind of get why you moved out there and you probably had this idea to beautify the land, but it takes a long time. So anyway, I would not live off grid. I like the convenience, but I like being outdoors, which leads us to our discussion more about the crunchy spectrum regarding food. One of the crunchiest.
Well, we're going to talk about our crunchy side.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're going to continue talking about this, where we fall on the spectrum. So with food, you've already heard, like Jessica, you're really into the sourdough. You make a lot of stuff.
I do.
You're about to start. Well, you're always talking about stuff you're about to start making homemade, and that's cool.
I made homemade bagels last night, which were a bit of a flop, but
I love that about you, that you tried it and it was still
never again.
I thought it was still pretty good.
I use that recipe.
We harvest / hunt, however you want to phrase it, and process most of our meat.
Majority of our meat.
Except for chicken. Like last year, we didn't really eat beef. Like we ate.
Well, no, we did not eat beef.
Yeah, I
never bought beef.
Probably 5 deer.
I haven't bought beef in a few years.
Yeah, we ate probably like 5 deer over the course of last year.
Yes.
With our family. And so I grew up hunting, and
it's the original organic grass-fed meat.
Like you cannot get more non-GMO healthy than like harvesting a deer from wild land. And there's such a misunderstanding about like hunting in our culture because like we're just so emotionally attached to animals. Like you forget that hunting, if you looked at the human history, it was the longest occupation in human history up until a few thousand years ago when agriculture and civilization started settling. Like humans in their DNA is desire to hunt game. And so it's like, well, how could you do that to an animal? Well, if you eat meat, period, somebody has to kill that animal. And then it begs the question, like, do you want to be connected to your food and have an appreciation for that process? Meaning killing the animal, skinning it, butchering it, or do you just want to never think about the fact that happens? That's one thing I've appreciated about hunting is like I appreciate food. I appreciate meat, and not just the health benefits, because there are so many health benefits. And it's something we talk about in our family is like we need to know where our food comes from, including meat. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I just think, if you go to Walmart and you just pick up a package of chicken, I mean, chances are that, or beef or whatever animal you're eating, probably lived and experienced a much more horrible life and death than the deer that you harvest on the land, that we use. And so, like you're saying, hunting gets a bad rap, but we really enjoy we've learned a ton about butchering and processing, and honestly also just, we actually eat all the meat. Yeah. Some people hunt and they don't, but we actually eat literally every single package of meat that I put in our freezer. We eat. We love it.
Our kids are involved in it. Mm-hmm. And so, it's kind of a fun thing. Like you helped me skin a deer for the first time. You've always been involved in the butchering. So like what we will do is I will harvest a couple deer, and then we will have like a Sunday or a Saturday where we spend the morning just like butchering it, put on a TV show, and we just do whatever we want with the meat. I mean, that's the other cool thing about hunting is like you choose exactly what you want to do with the meat, how you want to make it, how you want to age it.
The other night I just made breakfast sausage and Italian sausage by myself. And I figured out finally how to make a good sausage, and I'm really excited about it. But I got to make it myself, and it was great. Well, and I think besides just hunting, I would say that we're not at a place where our garden could sustain our family, like the fruits and vegetables, especially because our growing season just isn't, year round. So it would be difficult to actually put up all of the produce that we would need. And also we live in a suburb. And I don't have the ton of space, but I do grow quite a bit.
Yep.
And I've really kind of narrowed down what our family eats. And so I'll grow pretty large quantities of green beans, tomatoes. I did potatoes last year. I didn't do it this past year. Lettuce, whenever it's in season, we'll eat a lot of that kind of thing. I would love to be able to expand the garden, honestly, but it is a ton of work. And the actual processing and canning and all of that is a ton of work.
It is.
So yeah, we got to pace ourselves.
Yeah, it is. And something that's been a struggle is dealing with the surplus. Like if you focus on if you actually do a really good job, you've got like all this surplus. Like that's why we have probably 30, 40 jars of salsa.
Well, I would have made tomato sauce, but honestly, our girls don't like tomato sauce. And I'm really big on we're going to use what we have, and I'm not going to make something that I know we're not going to eat.
Yeah.
We eat salsa almost daily, and our girls love salsa. And so I made a lot of salsa this year, and it's good. And we've been eating it all year long. It's been great.
Yeah. In general, I would say like we really prioritize whole foods, home cooked meals. I just feel better. And I related to her husband in the book, Jason, because he talked about how he feels a lot better now that he eats more whole foods. And I remember like my journey in that, because it started even before we were married. I remember being in college, and every day I went to the cafeteria and I ate a cheeseburger and fries because they had some pretty good cheeseburger and fries. I remember one day just being like, this is probably not the healthiest thing ever. And so I started replacing my fries with a salad. So I was like, cheeseburger and salad. And then over time, I was like, you know what? I put a lot of ranch on this salad. There's not much salad going on. Maybe I should try not having dressing. And then I started eating just plain salad with my burger. And now
he does a quick salad, which we have found out that there are other men out there who do this. So if you have a loved one who does this, please comment and tell us. But Ben does a quick salad where he just takes raw spinach from the refrigerator, and he just shoves it in his mouth before he eats anything else.
Yes.
And I mean, just eats it.
Maximum efficiency. I will get whatever leftovers I'm going to heat up, because we usually eat leftovers from the night before. Put that in the microwave. For that 30 or 45 seconds, I just stuff a huge pile of spinach in my mouth. I call it a quick salad.
And I literally thought he was the only one who ever did this. And then I talked with a good friend of mine, and she was like, my husband does this too. And it's funny because her husband and Ben are actually very similar. They hunt, and they're very scrunchy like we are.
It's my buddy Matt, and he's a very efficiency minded.
Yes.
We commiserated. He was just like, why would I take all that time to make this big salad? Like women do. Women make these salads. It takes them like 30 minutes to prepare this thing. It's just
it tastes so good. It's so enjoyable.
Like to me, it is like
food is meant to be enjoyed.
Oh, I love the taste of spinach, raw spinach. I enjoy it.
Okay.
But it was funny when I used to work in an office. I would sneak in there to do my quick salad so nobody could see me and think I was a psycho.
Well, he also worked in an office full of women, so they would have absolutely roasted him about that.
Well, somebody did walk in on me one time eating my quick salad, and she was like, "Are you some kind of rabbit?" So I had to be a lot sneakier after that.
That's funny.
But I was eccentric in many other ways too.
You still are.
Let me wrap the thing up with food. And we also break the rules all the time, very consciously. Like
last night we had Panda Express, and
yeah. It was awesome. We will go to birthday parties and we don't make our kid eat something separate. Yeah, everything they're eating is fake, but it's like, it's just
one meal.
It's one meal, and it's about more of the grand scheme of things. And so that's why we're pretty scrunchy.
We're like a very 80-20. That's what I would describe. We're 80%, 20%, 80%, whole foods, 20% junk food.
Yeah. DIY projects. We were going to talk about that. We kind of hit that earlier. Yeah. We do DIY if it's convenient.
Right.
But we don't like to just spend all of our free time doing that. Chemicals. This is a big one because there's more and more research to showing like chemicals and toxins, and I would say microplastics, like in everything.
Yeah.
And that's something that
Big
we've made
strides.
some strides, but like, and we'll talk more about this in the next episode. Like if you go down that rabbit hole of trying to eliminate them from your life,
It's impossible.
it's impossible. And that's a sad truth.
There's microplastics in our soil, in every garden. I mean, it's literally impossible.
And this ties into the next thing I was writing notes about with environmental care. There's so many systemic barriers in our culture to actually take care of the environment, like on a large scale, or remove toxins from your life on a practical scale, to the point where it's just not as really worth it sometimes. And that's not anybody's individual fault. It's a system's fault, you know, and that's where it gets into like the conspiracy theories that people will come up with. And as like a guy that's just studied a lot of history, you can just see the evolution of just how systems set up for things to, say, destroy the planet or, you know, pollute the population. And it was not necessarily all this deliberate thing. Yes, you know, money's involved and that's the effect of capitalism. But what the point I'm trying to get to is like, it's really hard to do some of this crunchy stuff that she talks about in the book because of just so many barriers. And I think as a family, we have like come to grips with, you've got to like pick and choose the things that you can really change. And so we don't spend a lot of like mental space being like, I'm going to just like have the lowest impact on the planet.
But if I have the option in the store to pick something that's more natural or whatever, then I definitely do that. And we've adjusted our budget to account for buying things that are a little bit more natural in general, or making our own stuff. Yeah. You know, I make my own cleaner a lot and that kind of thing.
Definitely. So. And the next one would be, we can kind of end on, and there's so much more that she talks about in the book about being crunchy, but modern medicine versus natural remedies. Mm-hmm. How would you describe our journey? And you can tie into some of our daughter's health journey of just like balancing just that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have never been just hardcore anti-modern medicine. And I think that would show, especially in our birth class and kind of the birth side of our company, is, hey, a medicated birth is really good. Birth is natural. It's a natural bodily process, but sometimes it does need medical intervention. And I would say that honestly has been my point of view forever. That has not really totally changed. So like we do vaccinate.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Don't come at me. That's a personal decision that we have. And I never really gave it a ton of thought. And then we have our daughter with medical complications where we have, obviously, she's alive today because of modern medicine. And I think when you have a situation like that and you have a kid who is really sick, who's literally being kept alive through the advances of modern medicine, you do kind of tend to have a different point of view. And, you know, I've had people, well-meaning people, you know, give me, you know, hey, have you tried this tincture or have you done this or whatever? And, you know, that no, because her chronic condition is actually genetic. And, you know, there's a lot that we could go into with all that. But I think a lot of times people want to believe, especially crunchy people, that everything can be cured through food and through herbs and all of that. And like, that's just actually not true. Right. Our lifespan is increased due to the invention of antibiotics, due to the invention of a lot of modern medicine that we appreciate and enjoy today. And I follow
that are causing issues though.
That are now has swung the pendulum and now we're kind of swinging back. So yeah, I'm not saying all modern, I mean, antibiotics is a great example of the maternal mortality rate decreased, not because OBs were a part of birth. It was because literally antibiotics saved women's lives who were getting infections. And so antibiotics are wonderful and have absolutely a place in our lives and in our health, but they are being overused.
And they're causing, what are they called? Superbugs?
I mean, our daughter contracted one of those once because she had to be on antibiotics, and these superbugs now are basically completely unable to even respond to antibiotics. We had to do all these extra antibiotics, and they basically were like, hey, if she gets it again, we don't know if we're even going to be able to kill it. Like, it's kind of a big deal, right? I did a whole presentation on this once. I think you should be really careful about how you use antibiotics. But all that to say, I think that when you have a daughter with a medical condition, and I follow a mom or an account who she was a really, really crunchy nurse who was really anti-Tylenol. This is a great example. So, crunchy people are really against Tylenol because it reduces some compound in your body that causes you to have all these health issues. And she was really anti-Tylenol, and she had a bunch of kids, and then she ended up having a baby. I think it was last year, and her baby had some really significant health complications and issues. He was in the NICU for almost a year, almost died multiple times, and he had to take Tylenol a lot for many different reasons. And she like completely flipped her account. Not completely, but she basically flipped from, hey, I'm like this super crunchy mom who's giving you all of this crunchy stuff and is very kind of one-sided and very biased, to, okay, I've now experienced the other side and I've actually changed my mind.
Yeah.
And she's like, I've changed my mind. I think that Tylenol absolutely has a place in caring for your children and all this, that, and the other. And I really appreciate her honesty, because I think that would be really hard to do, especially if you were really, really crunchy. And then you get some life experience that helps you realize, oh, actually, it is a privilege to be crunchy. And I think that's my main thing that I always want to say, is that if you get the opportunity to only give your kids all of the most natural things, like that is actually a privileged place that a lot of us actually don't even get that opportunity.
Let me clarify, whether you're privileged with money and you can go to Whole Foods and whatever, or you're privileged with time.
With time, or with just health in general.
Yeah.
Like you actually just generally don't need additional medical care.
Yeah.
They're preventing things in their minds, but like when you have a kid who actually has something that cannot be prevented and it has to be just managed, it just completely changes your entire worldview. And everything that seems to be a really big deal does kind of get a little smaller.
Exactly.
Because you're just kind of like, that's really not that big of a deal, people, And so I'm not dogging on people. I mean, obviously I'm quite crunchy. So vaccinations are one of those things where, if it is actually really important for my daughter and for our family to be vaccinated. And so that's been a decision that we have continued to make. And I know the rhetoric on the other end about vaccines. And for us, that's an important decision. We are the family that, when you read the whole thing about, compromised immune system and people with compromised immune systems,
that's
like
us.
We are them.
Yeah.
You're looking at us. Hi.
Yeah.
And so we're going to vaccinate. And that's just where we're at with that.
Yeah. Well, as always, we come back to this place of balance, which is why we started Balanced Birth Couple. And it was actually this issue. It was that you and I came from the natural birth world and we love it. It's almost like that's our like pulse beat when it comes to birth. But we have learned and seen and experienced that modern medicine plays an amazing role inside of birth when used correctly. And that's why we started Balanced Families, is it applies to like all these other areas of life. But what we care about the most is not so much about the actual external decisions of like, do you have an epidural or not? What we really care about is the human heart and how you carry it emotionally, how you carry it spiritually, how you carry it mentally. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about in part 2 next week, the Country Life part 2, which we're going to subtitle it The Dark Side of Crunchy Life. So thanks for tuning in.
See you later. Thank you so much for listening today. It would mean so much to us if you left a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you heard this.
And let us know your thoughts on today's episode by leaving a comment on Spotify or YouTube, where you can also watch these episodes.